Hey, hi everyone. How are you? Good evening, from good morning, good afternoon. It depends on where you're hearing me from. Welcome to another session of IFRS, IAS, and SAP S for HANA reviews. Yeah, and it's been an interesting session so far. We started this journey of looking through all the international financial reporting standards and national accounting standards, and try to map that to how this impacts our IT structure, our IT service using SAP as a case study. So for this sessions, we're just going through um, the standards to then go through the system and actually either validate or confirm or or learn more on what the standards are and how SAP is actually handling complying or handling issues that regards complying with these standards. So it's been an interesting time. If you check my channel, you're going to see other videos for other standards. Very interesting feedback. Thank you guys for always sending in your feedbacks. Please keep that coming. And if this is your first time, it's good to have you. Please don't forget to if you see this video, most importantly, share. Sharing is the most important thing because that's how the essence of these sessions are actually to share knowledge. So please share the video. And if you want, and I believe you want to also get updates from my regular sessions. So please subscribe and like the channel. And please, as much as possible, your feedbacks are very, very important for us to, improve what we do and, keep supporting you or keep helping, supporting the community with this, knowledge. And why not? You can write me an email or send me a WhatsApp message if you feel you to know more about these sessions or you want to find out about training, support, especially within the business analysis and the SAP space, please feel free to reach out to me. And the focus for this meeting today is very interesting. We're looking at IFRS 15, which is revenue from contract with suppliers, and SAP S/4HANA Finance. All right. And so we're going to take our time, understand what this standard is all about, and basically how does the system, help you comply with this standard. That's basically the aim of this. And the goal is at the end of this session, you should have learned more about the standard. You should have also understood how the system, how SAP S/4HANA is complying, so that when you get to projects, especially those within the finance space, when these issues come up, you are not second guessing. You're sure that you have seen it from this video that yes, for this standard, this is how the system, this is what the standard is all about and how the system can handle those standards. And I hope this can be, of course, we won't have the time to discuss everything about this standard and all the system can do, but this is just a guide and an information to also let us know that to let all of us learn and why not to also prompt more research for the inquisitive minds, right? So thank you very much once again for being part of this. I value your comments. I value the time you put into just watching these videos. Please keep them coming. And thank you, for the feedback so far. Yeah, so um it's my name is Kelechi Kelly Adede. I'm also I would say I am an SAP finance consultant. I'm a business analyst and work very well within the project space in SAP S/4HANA Finance. So I'm an ERP specialist, especially in the area of finance. So whether it's SAP, whether it's Dynamics, whether it's Sage, whether it's QuickBooks, as long as it's an ERP and it's finance related, and of course it's about driving change and digital transformation in businesses, why not? You can always reach out to me. We can always have that discussion around this topic. So yeah, haven't said much about and introduce this course. Let's go fully into it. Let's learn. Let's open up and let's see how this very important act, this very important standard, how it's being handled by SAP. It's going to be a very interesting session. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because we're going to, as much as possible, look at all the IFRS and ISs currently, and try to see how the system is actually complying. I think should be our third. We have done IS1, we've done IS16, this is IS15, so IFRS 15. So we'll keep bringing up more ISs, and hopefully we all get to learn and understand how this works. All right, so let's go into the course. Thank you. All right. Now, let's just take a brief of for those who are new to standards, for those who are not from the finance background, or you're from finance background, of it's been a while, just for a refresher, IFRS means International Financial Reporting Standard, while IS means International Accounting Standards. Now, just like every profession, the accounting profession has laws and standards that guides how accountants or any other one or anyone practicing accounting reports their activities, whether it's especially financial activities from the business, from the operations, and which is very, very important to not just reporting, but recording, recognizing, and reporting. Now, and of course, remember the essence, the focus of this is, well, look, there are a lot of ERPs that comply with these standards, but the focus for this session is on SAP, right? So SAP has also ensured that SAP S/4HANA, which is one of its latest products, is IS and IFRS compliant through, some features like parallel accounting, um, universal journals, single source of truth, functionality, online analytical processing and online transaction processing, that's OLTP and OLAP, um, also have driven the concept of compatibility and simplification views, because what we have seen, if you're moving from the old version of ECC to S4, some of these things are basically some of the changes you realize when you come to the SAP S/4HANA platform. And of course, we have different projects now like Rise, Grow, so we'll look at these things as we go ahead. And of course, some changes around the concept of business partners, reporting, and like analytics. All these changes, I believe, is also geared to not just make the ERP, not just make SAP um, agile, and you know not make the system um meet it should, I mean, don't just make SAP agile, but make the system compliant with standards, because of course SAP is an international application, and also support businesses and support departments like finance to understand what's happening in the business, understand the operations, understand the finances, and understand basically reporting. So, like I said, recognition, recording, reporting. So when you hear the word record to report, it gives you a little bit of sense on where we're actually going with this. So because SAP S/4HANA, which is one of the major changes that have happened within the SAP product, has also, so from my view, I see that making all these changes has also helped the system comply with these standards. That's the view. That's really the aim we're trying to drive at here. And we're going to see that as we move forward, and try to really delve deep into this standard. Now, these functionalities will be discussed later in the presentation. Also, these functionalities ensure that companies across the globe can have a unified reporting structure. These are some of the benefits of these changes, and also in complying with, things like international reporting standard, international accounting standards, and international financial reporting standards. So one of it is having that unified reporting structure, especially where you have a company that has global, presence. Secondly, improve speed in terms of processing transactions, which is key to decision making. Um, Enforces accuracy and reliability on whatever the reports are, and fairness in reporting financial operations. And of course, it's assist with preparing financial statements for management and external users. So you can see some that this changes, and also in the quest to comply with these standards, these are some of the benefits that the system has actually been able to gain, by making sure that these changes are also not just changes to system, but changes to compliance with standards. Now, the focus for this session would be IFRS 15, which says revenue from contracts with suppliers. Uh, Sounds interesting, right? So let's move into it. Yeah. So let's now look at IFRS 15, um, which says revenue from contract with suppliers. So let's understand what this standard is all about. So first of all, IFRS 15 basically spells out the principles businesses should adopt and adhere to when reporting financial transactions of contracts it entered with its customers and clients. So it's very simple, right? I'll give you a typical scenario. Um, I mean, you own a consulting firm, right? And you have gone out there to put in some adverts. The advert has attracted some customers, right? And the customer has reached out to you, requesting for certain kind of, requesting for, if, just making a request and asking if you guys actually can offer certain type of services that they need, right? And that will trigger some back and forth in terms of communication with certain documents like contracts, quotes, sales orders, and the rest of them. Now, so the act is saying that the revenue you get from these contracts with suppliers, there are principles that you need to adhere to when reporting those revenues from contracts. Now, there are revenue. What this means is there can be revenue from other sources that comes into the business, but this is specific to contracts. You can get revenue from direct sales. You can get revenue from, disposals, but this is basically revenue from contracts you have entered with your customers or your clients. All right. So that's just try to stress that point. Now, moving on, many large organizations or businesses enter into contracts. Contract is a very popular word in the business space. Now, they enter into contracts with their customers to provide goods and services. And when the terms of the contract are fulfilled, the business is expected to be paid. IFRS 15 reports the information about the nature, the terms, the timing, the revenue, and the cash flow of contracts. So the idea is where the essence of the act is to make sure that that I mean that the in terms of fairness in reporting, that you have to also disclose stuff around the nature of that contract, the terms of that contract, the timing, the revenue, and of course the cash flow that has come in as a result of executing that job. Now, how does SAP come into the picture? So SAP S/4HANA, like finance, sales, and sourcing and procurement, have functionalities that can enhance the reporting of financial information about revenue from contracts with customers in terms of nature, timing, revenue, and cash flow activities. So what it means is actually, in terms of reporting this information, SAP as an ERP can actually support with reporting information, in terms of complying with IRS 15, if you look at the structure from the nature down to the cash flow. And of course, this functionality cuts across different modules in SAP S/4HANA Finance. So let's discuss these functionalities and hopefully see what we can learn from them. Okay, now, what you have here is what we call the five-step model for recognizing revenue from contracts with customers in compliance with IFRS 15. So the idea is that the essence of this is, as consultants, especially as consultants, as VAs, as technical architects, and whatever position you have, it is important that when you're in contracts that involved, when you are in projects that involve contracts, the essence of this class is to trigger a consciousness in your mind to always check and confirm your configs as regards complying with IFRS 15, right? Because, of course, when you gather requirements, when you design the system, um, you should have at the back of your mind that whatever configs you're doing and whatever end user process that is going to be run, you need to make sure that this act, especially if you're using the also, of course, there's a contract module in SAP also. It's very, very good to point out that if you're also going to be running that module, it really has to, you need to check compliance with IFRS 15. Now, let's look at the IFRS, core principle. Now, of course, IFRS 15 core principle is that revenue should be recognized when a promised good or services is transferred to a customer, and the amount should reflect the consideration expected in exchange. So there are two parts to this, right? There is a promise and there is a consideration. Right? So also in configuring the system should reflect these two sides of what IFRS 15 stands for. So when you log into SAP, for example, when you raise a contract in SAP, of course, you will see that it's actually geared towards driving and ensuring that the business keeps to its side of the promise, right? And make sure that the system also supports delivering that service in terms of the documentations that will go out, tracking those projects in terms if the projects are delivered in phases and the rest of them. Because if the system does not facilitate that, then you're going to find it difficult complying. So this is just trying to show you how ERPs and especially SAP S/4HANA should comply or is complying with IFRS 15. Now, let's see a summary of what this five-step model is, of how we recognize revenue. So the idea is that what is revenue, definitely, when it comes to a contract? How do you recognize that this is a revenue from this contract and this is how we're supposed to recognize those transactions in our system? So it starts from the bottom to the top. So the first step says identify the contracts with a customer. It's a very good step, right? One of the ways to comply is in the initial, discussions with the customer, and of course with the back and forth conversations through different channels. The first thing is identify what that contract is with that customer, and the identification can come in different form, right? Of course, when documents are prepared and contracts are signed, the the expectations of that contract and the responsibilities of both parties are well clearly stated within that contract. Number two, identify the performance obligations in the contract. Like we said, there are two sides to that contract. One is that the promised goods or services has been transferred. The second is which is the obligation on the side of the business. The second part is that when that obligation is done and confirmed, yeah, the business should also expect to receive due consideration for that obligation, right? So identifying that performance obligation is also a major part of what IFRS 15 talks about. The third is define the transaction price. So, I mean, this happens based on, certain factors. So pricing is also something that happens within this sphere of sales and contracts. So there are different methods you can use to determine the price, but that would also involve whatever the company policy is on pricing. So you have to make sure that the price for that transaction is determined, and also communicated. The next is allocate transaction price to each performance obligation. So once the price is determined, that price should be assigned to what that obligation will be. And that's where the revenue is actually derived from. And you see, it's tied to performance, right? So it's basically saying this is the cost of performing this service for you. And of course, where is agreed and signed off, it's expected that that will be done. Then the last in the ladder says recognize revenue when a performance obligation is satisfied by transferring the promised goods and services to the customer. So immediately, depending on the accounting principle you're on, whether it's cash basis or accrual basis, whichever, what this is saying is that according to the contract, once that performance obligation is satisfied by both yourself and of course the customer, and goods or service has been transferred, it's at that point you should recognize revenue in your books. So this 5-step, right, really is what IFRS 15 says, and SAP S/4HANA as an application actually have processes to document and manages all the steps. And by doing that, makes you, comply with this standard. So let's see how that works from our end. Now, if you look at the first step, which says identify the contract with the customer, you can see that what we have here is that there are different ways in SAP S/4HANA you can identify contracts from customers. Yeah, so there is a contract module. We have master contracts, we have quantity contracts, we have service contracts, we have value contracts. These are some of the contract, of course, from some of the methods you can identify contracts you have with the customer. And of course, there is also a sales module that handles sales contract. And of course, you can see for those who have access to Fiori, you can go to manage sales contract, or you can use the transaction code TK41. That's also how you can manage sales contracts. We also have the sales contract fulfillment rate app in Fiori, which you can also check fulfillment of that contract in terms of your obligations. You can manage down payments if based on the contract, the customer is expected to make a down payment before the job commences, or something like a mobilization. Then you have sales orders that basically also tells that confirms the right to fulfillment of that service, right? So depending on what that document is for, what that document is used for within that company. But of course, once the flow is from contract, you can convert the contract to a sales order. Of course, then do your service completion if it's a service, or receive your goods, and of course proceed to raising invoices and making payments, more like the order to cash process. So number two, identify performance obligations. We also have one of the ways you can identify on the system. So this is the IFRS, and this is how SAP S complies. This is IFRS, the second step in the model. And this is so you can use the SAP, you can use the sales order to identify performance, because once you create a sales order, it means that performance has been initiated. Right. It's basically it's a way of saying that, look, we're ready to do this job, or we have started doing this job. And of course, you can display and change sales orders as well. Number three is determine the sales price. Of course, we have document pricing policy in the SD module. So you can check the VOV8 or billing type VOFA. It's also another way you can determine the transaction price. You can also there's also different pricing policies or different pricing methodologies. So this just depends on we have markup, we have margin. There's different ways of it could be a percentage of production, a percentage of cost. So depending on really what the company policy is on determining price, when that is done outside, some of these things are done outside the system, but that has to actually be brought into the system for transaction and for recording and for for data sake. 4 is allocate transaction type to each performance obligation. Yeah, and once again, this is taking us to the SD module. Sales order is also very important in allocating transaction price to the performance obligation. So if you open the sales order, there are columns that are for services or for items, and of course, there's a column for price. So once that is saved, you have actually allocated a transaction price to that service or that item that you're about to deliver or perform to that customer. And we also have billing, which is part of it. We also have the material master data, which you can use to create the service or the item that you need to attach a price to. Then the 5th is recognize revenue when performance obligation is satisfied by transferring a promised goods or service to a customer. Of course, we have a lot of ways you can recognize revenue, and we have the order to cash process that takes you through the right from contracts down to receiving the funds or raising invoice, of course, which triggers a transaction to revenue. And of course, depending on what the nature of the transaction is, depending on what point do you recognize revenue, is it at the what does the contract say? But most importantly is when you raise an invoice, for example, that is when revenue is recognized at most, really, because if you look at the order to cash process, right? At the point of raising a sales order, of course, there's no financial implication. At the point of receiving that, at the point of delivering that item, of course, you have cost of sales getting involved, you have the inventory getting involved, but that also still is a trigger to recognizing your revenue. Then, of course, when that is fulfilled, you have to raise an invoice that triggers the revenue GL, and that takes us to the next thing. We also have MM involved by creating those materials or those services, and of course we have supplier payments that is also assigned to an invoice. So this is just basically saying that I have SAP S/4HANA complies with these 5-step processes in terms of recognizing revenue according to IFRS 15. Now, also one of the also just looking briefly around how reporting, how the relationship between reporting and IFRS 15. Of course, we have the financial statement version that is also because when you recognize the revenue at the GL level, of course, at the end of the day, that filters down to your financial statement. So at that point, your report, because you have complied at the transaction stage and the transactions have hit your GLs, it's assumed that also your financials will also receive same data, which is also compliant. So the financial statement version is also a very important reporting that tells and complies with IFRS 15. Yeah. So of course, income and expense, including gains and losses, is one of the sub structure that tells you where that sits. So this just showing you how you can access your financial statement, the menu path, and how a structured report basically looks like in SAP S/4HANA. Wow, thank you very much, guys, for another very wonderful session. I enjoyed it. I had fun because it was a lot of learning for me. I hope you enjoyed it too, and I hope that you can understand now how um, how standards actually drive the way we should report our financial activities. Also, even when we're using a system, we should always make sure whatever has been designed or configured or whatever end user transaction that's happening on the system, that this is in compliance with standards. It's very, very important. So I hope that with this very few minutes we have had, you've been able to understand what IFRS 15 is all about. You've understood the five-step model. You've understood how SAP S/4HANA is actually supporting those models and how SAP S/4HANA is also supporting compliance with IFRS 15. Wow. So thank you very much, guys, for listening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updated information. We're going to be looking at the next IFRS IAS very soon. So stay tuned. And why not? If you want to reach out to us for trainings, we have CEO trainings, we have internship programs, we have what we call the SAP Technical Training for Functional Consultant. We have SAP Business Analysis, that basically talks about, end-to-end project implementation within IT or the SAP space, right? And you can send me a WhatsApp message or reach me on my, send an email, or you can reach out to me also on LinkedIn. Kelechi Kelly Adele. If you search for me, definitely you'll reach me. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your feedbacks. Please keep them coming and do have a wonderful day. Thank you once again for joining, and cheers to all of you.